So first of all, how many of you have seen a Cisco ad, a GE ad, or an IBM ad about IoT? These are the ones where, you know, the cow is up on the hill and it's raining. So I don't know about you, but I have a hard time relating to how that is going to happen or actually have an impact to me. And it turns out that there are a lot of people very excited in the tech world about what this IoT thing could mean. John Chambers, who up until a couple days ago was running the largest networking company in the world, is fond of saying that there will be 13 trillion devices, I think, installed and live as part of IoT in the next 5 years. You know, I think one thing that really I think John missed and is important is how is this whole IoT thing going to start? Because you have to solve a real problem. You have to have something that is going to actually deliver value to customers. And I can see how jet engines and managing locomotives could be important, but I believe that the 4 billion outdoor lights or high-powered indoor lights around the world are going to be one of the very first IoT applications where there is a ton of value delivered to end users and customers. And that's our basic premise, which means if that's true, that 4 billion of these 13 trillion devices are actually going to be things that we here build and sell, that means that, and let's just say that half the show is outdoor or high-powered here, that means that half this show is going to be an IoT show in 5 years. And so it's going to be a very, very important change, and it's something I think that we all need to think about, and that's sort of the purpose of this panel. So I'd like to spend a minute now about what IoT is and how it relates to this market, and especially why. So we could start with the perspective that a lighting vendor might have about how we get to IoT, and it might start with, well, if we do LED and it's digital, that gives us a basis, and then next year we could be talking about controls because we need to turn this LED on and off, and because it's digital now we have the ability to do that. And then after controls we could make this big leap and we could get to IoT, and that would be a progression of products and marketing and branding. But I'd like to flip that around and spend a minute talking about from the perspective of the customers. So I travel around the world now talking about smart cities, IoT, and especially lighting. And to sort of frame the whole topic, by 2050, which is 35 years from now, not that far, 75% of the world's population are going to be living in cities. And during that time, we're going to have to have it's going to be an era of less infrastructure spending. So when we're spending less money on infrastructure, more and more people are showing up in congregated areas like cities. How are we going to not only maintain the quality of life, but improve the quality of life in cities? It's a big question. I just spent a week in China on a trade mission, and in Beijing and Shanghai and Guangdong province, and they get it. They really get it. They are all about smart cities, and they actually understand that lighting is going to be the key to smart cities because they have a big problem, which is this huge city-bound population, enormous pollution, water quality, a lot of issues, and they believe that smart cities are going to help them solve this problem. And the reason that sort of what we do can help is that I like to quote Mayor Bloomberg here from New York. He's fond of saying, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So if you don't know what's going on, and in particular in real time, you can't understand that you have a problem, and if you're trying to make it better, you don't know whether you made it better or not. So this idea that we need to get a lot of data about how our cities are operating is a very key point, and you need to get that data in real time. So now that we need to get the data in real time, there's a second gigantic problem, and that is, what do you do with all of it? So it's really nice to wave our arms and say, oh yeah, we'll get all this data and then you can run your city better. But we all know, I think, you know, we have the building department, you have the police department, you have streets, and they all have been doing what they've been doing for the last 50 years, and if you hand them a new tool that is just flooding them with data, not a whole lot's going to happen or get better. So we need applications and services that know how to deal with that data. So those are the two big issues from a customer perspective when they think about IoT and running a city. You need lots of real-time data, and you need applications and services to take advantage of it. So the question is, how do you make that happen? Well, again, let's go back to this resource constraint. So there's not a lot of money to spend on building out a whole new IoT platform. But as many of you know, there's at least some money going into lighting maintenance, lighting the power that it takes to power lights, and consequently, a lot of people are thinking about LED upgrades because there's the maintenance savings and there's the power savings. So if you think about LED, now all of a sudden, you've just built a little kitty of unused operating expenses, and that can be used. If you also think about LED, what's going to happen is somebody in the next, let's just say that this 4 billion light transition takes 20 years. It means that somebody in a bucket truck with a screwdriver is going to visit all 4 billion lights in the next 20 years. And they're going to remove the HID fixture and put up a brand new shiny LED fixture. And I don't know what the average cost would be, but let's say that it's about $100. So we're going to spend $400 billion over the next 15 to 20 years to install an LED infrastructure. Well, what would happen if what we did is at the very same time that we installed that LED fixture, we also installed some type of smart, real-time data gathering system, sensing system. Now all of a sudden, we've got a common housing, so we've saved the housing cost. LEDs are semiconductors, so we've got a DC power supply. The labor is already paid for, the $100 is already paid for. You don't have to negotiate a right-of-way, which can be a big deal if you want to get up on the top of a pole. And so you've dramatically lowered the cost of implementing this sensor system by combining it with the LED upgrade. Brenna Berman is the CIO for Chicago, and at one time Mayor Daley said he wanted Chicago to be the brightest city in the country, and they have 425,000 streetlights in Chicago, and they are about to upgrade all of them to LED. And Brenna has said, I should be shot if I go spend $40 million in labor to install 425,000 LED fixtures, and I don't install some type of sensory network that can help me manage my city. So the first big idea that Sensity has, and I think it's a very important one, is let's combine globally this sensory network with the LED transition. This helps not only with the installation cost and the capital cost, but the operating costs can be offset by the energy savings and the maintenance. The second issue is, how do we deliver the many different applications and services that are going to be required to make sense of this data? And where we got this idea, I used to run engineering at Apple Computer, and I knew Steve well. And I remember talking to Steve one time, and he was talking about, he was very hot, ironically, on building a mobile application platform with thousands of applications that would be focused, he thought, initially on health, which was the ironic part. And so he had looked really hard, and they were thinking about putting this application platform on iPods. And what he figured out is that the iPod was not ubiquitous enough, and he needed this application platform to be everywhere. And he needed it to be on something that typically would be upgraded quite often. And so, obviously, what happened is we got this. And a lot of people think that Apple's idea for this was all about a better phone. And it wasn't about a phone. It was about a platform where hundreds of thousands and now millions of applications could be developed that are going to change people's lives. Only one of the applications on here is a phone. So the idea of a platform is really, really critical. And if you talk to cities or if you talk to anyone who buys these sensory systems and you ask them what problems they got, they all, not all, but many of them have unique uses or applications that they'd like to solve. And if you have to build a vertical application solution for every single one of these, it's never going to happen. So the idea that you would build an application platform that has what's called an API with thousands of applications that make use of all this data that is gathered by one network, which is attached to the lighting, is extremely powerful. That's what we call a light sensory network. So that's the basic idea. And now I want to talk a little bit about inertia and how we make this happen. So continuing with the mobile phone analogy. So the CTIA is an industry association. In fact, they won't describe it. On the website, they say the name, what do they say? The name CTIA stands for nothing. Because what it used to stand for is the Cellular Telephone Industry Association. And they've gone so far beyond cellular telephone that they don't even want to be associated with it. In fact, what they call it is now, their new conference, which is for them the equivalent of LFI, is called Super Mobility. So, but let's go to that first show. So at that first show, which was back in 1984, this was a cell phone. Some of you may have actually used these. So this was a cell phone. And I'd like to now take what happened with this cell phone and with the CTIA and talk about what I think will happen to this industry and what will happen to this conference, just to give you an idea of what change will be. So this is 1984. Let's call this an HID fixture. Been around for a while. We know it. We understand it. It delivers light. It's got certain characteristics. So here's our HID fixture. Then Motorola got really inspired, and we came out with induction lighting. So now we've got induction. Same thing. Same, same type of frequencies, everything else, just smaller, better. So this is induction. And then we got really inspired and came out with LED. So here's an LED equivalent. Same industry, just moving down the path, doing effectively the same thing, just better, cheaper, faster, smaller. And that's what's been happening in lighting. But what we're talking about, of course, is this. And that's what's going to happen. So think of CES, think of CTIA, which is now Super Mobility. Our whole world is going to change because I'm telling you, all of these customers around the world who are actually trying to solve the problems of making life better for their citizens, all of them have figured out that lighting is the perfect place to build a system like this. And so our industry, and I know we're going to do it, we're going to adopt this, is going to, I think, change a lot, and this is a huge opportunity for us. So one of the things you have to think about is, well, how is this all going to happen? And, why is Hugh Martin up here talking about this? Why isn't GE or Philips up here talking about it? And I just want to spend a minute on this because I've built a number of successful startups in Silicon Valley. And there's something really uniquely powerful about what a startup can do. If you're a large company, you can throw a lot of money at the problem, but you need to be able to think about the problem holistically, without bias, without internal politics, without saying, oh, gee, here's a group in our company that has built this unbelievable software system, so we have to use that. Or here's this very cool processor that we have to use. You can think about it holistically. You can figure out what you want to build end to end, and you can introduce it. So we had to develop a whole bunch of custom hardware and sensors that go in the light. We had to develop a Linux-based operating system to run the light. We had to develop a Wi-Fi-based high-speed network to put all these things together, a cloud backend, the APIs, a developer kit, because there are going to be thousands of developers calling in with technical questions about how they make all this work. We had to build all of that. And perhaps a big company could do that. I'll give you an example that many of you will know well. So not so long ago, there was the giant in search called Yahoo. And two companies decided that they had to do something about it. And literally, this is what happened. Microsoft said, this is a really critical feature. We are going to go spend $1 billion to crush Yahoo, because what we have is mass, momentum, size, and we have a ton of money. We're going to go after this problem, $1 billion. And then two guys in a dorm room at Stanford said, I think we have a better idea about search. Let's call our company Google. So the point is, size doesn't always matter, and startups can do it. Now, there is no way that Sensity Systems is going to sell 4 billion lights. And there's no way that we're even going to have a distribution channel or the go-to-market impact that's required. And so what we've said is, okay, you know what we're going to do? We're going to do what we do best, which is develop technology, make sure that there are thousands of applications, and we're going to work with partners. So if you've been by our booth, you'll see that we've got Cisco as a partner, the largest network company in the world. We've got Acuity Brands, we have Emerlux, and there will be more to come. And what we believe is that it's extremely important that there is a common system or API that everyone uses, because in 5 to 10 years, when a city or a customer is considering what kind of light to buy, they're actually not going to spend too much time on efficacy. They're not going to spend a lot of time on the look or the other performance factors. They may spend a bunch of time on the price. But what they're really going to say is, how many applications run on your light? How many parking applications are in your portfolio? How many security solutions do you have? Or we like Genetec. Does Genetec run on your system? It's the same question you ask when in the early days when not everything ran on iPhone and iOS and Android. It's the same question, and that's where this world is going to go. And so the most important thing is that we can't have 15 iOS, Androids, Microsofts, Windows, Macintoshes. We have one, maybe two. And so how can we build a model that allows us to have a platform that really enables all of us to go to market and solve these problems? And that's what Sensity is about. We're trying to build this platform that can be a common language that all these applications can sit on, so that other companies can make use of these applications to go to market. So that's what we're about. But applications is the key. And so what I'd like to do now is invite up our panelists, because we're going to talk about applications, because that's where this world is going. And I think there's some really interesting questions that come up once you start talking about what kinds of things these systems would do. So could I invite our panelists up, please? So first up, we have Heather Zichal. Heather was the former Deputy Assistant to the President for Energy and Climate Change, serving in the Obama administration. In November 2013, she left, and today she's a consultant focused on energy and climate policy. Steve Steinhilber is Cisco's Vice President of Industry Solutions Group, and he's focused on ecosystems, of which we are a member. He's responsible for developing partnerships to accelerate Sensity's entry into new markets, such as transportation, energy, public safety, security, smart buildings, smart city markets, and more. Ed Sayers is the Vice President of Energy Service and Sustainable Practices for Simon Properties. You probably know Simon, 374 malls around the country, who's responsible for the management of Simon's energy, commodities, and profit centers for energy-related practices across the portfolio of properties. And then Ed Davis, you may recognize, he's been in law enforcement for 35 years?
Hard to believe. 15, I started at 15.
You started at 15, okay, good. He's been in law enforcement for 35 years and served as the 40th police commissioner for the city of Boston from December 2006 to October of 2013, and notably, the marathon bombings occurred in that period of time, and he was the lead police official that worked on solving that problem. And he's testified about Congress about the bombing and lessons learned. So why don't you have a seat? And what I'd like to do first is have each of the panel members talk a little bit about their perspective on this whole idea of smart cities, IoT, and applications that are going to be enabled. So first, Heather, maybe you could talk a little bit about a federal perspective on this?
Sure. So I have been in Washington, D.C. for about 15 years in different roles, but providing me a unique perspective on the interaction between the energy industry and the U.S. government. I think we're all at a lighting event, but I do think it is worth just taking a couple seconds to think big picture about what's happening in our broader energy picture today. Because as fast as the technology is changing and as quickly as things are moving in the lighting industry that we might not have predicted, I think the same is largely true of the energy industry. Today, the United States is #1 in terms of producing oil and gas, something even 5 years ago I don't think many people would have predicted. America is #1 in wind power. Every 3 weeks in the United States, we bring online as much solar power as we did in all of 2008. And thanks to lower prices and better fuel economy standards, American families are going to save about $750 at the pump this year. So a lot of things we didn't predict, but a lot of things really moving in our direction. So I think now is really the perfect time to stand back and do some reflection on where we want to go and what the future should look like, and think critically about the opportunities and challenges as we plan for the future. From my perspective, this is what I value so much about Hugh and the great team at Sensity, is that they're doing exactly that. Not only are they thinking about where's the future of lighting going, they're actually helping define what the Internet of Things actually is. So to Hugh's point, there's 4 billion lights because we know 4 billion outside HID lights, and we know that LEDs can save 70% of the energy. They last 10 years, not 2. So the lights are going to get changed. The real question is, what is the additional technology that we're going to put on top of those, on top of those lights? Taking one step back, you've also got a lot of communities thinking about what are the applications that I can use to help improve the lives of my local citizens? How do I think of new solutions to tackle some of the energy challenges that our communities are facing? And it's really the vision of smart cities that's going to help get this done. At the federal level, it might be a little bit hard to think about, well, how do outdoor lights actually factor into the federal government's thinking? And the answer is that actually factor in pretty heavily for this administration. Not only is it clear that President Obama is very focused on what we can do to help bring greenhouse gas emissions down, he's also very focused on the innovation and tech agenda, and he's also very focused on how we can bring applications to communities and improve lives. More specifically, they felt so committed to the opportunity around outdoor lighting that they actually pursued a specific outdoor lighting challenge. And the Department of Energy is managing a program that ultimately the goal is to switch out 1.5 million poles, but also work a broader program to try and identify and work together to tackle some of the more basic challenges that we know exist, some of the barriers to broader deployment of the technology. I think from the government's perspective, when they think about, well, what exactly might those challenges be, first and foremost, they're very focused on the fact that LED technology sort of came out of the box and was a bit confusing for a lot of the users, and the technology's evolved so quickly, it's been hard for people to keep up with what is the technology? How can I use it? Is it good? Is it reliable? So part of it is just, I'd say, an education piece. And then second is the financing. How do we help communities think about financing mechanisms to invest in these upgrades? And let me just say, I think this is certainly a challenge that we can overcome. One of the things that's been fascinating from my perspective, nobody could see the financing mechanisms that SolarCity has put forwards to support rooftop solar. Nobody could foresee some of the innovative financing mechanisms that we've come up for supporting electrification, EV recharging. So I think advanced lighting is there too, and with a lot of thought and collaboration, I think we can really work with not only the U.S. government and municipalities, but the investment community as well to come up with some solutions. I want to just say quickly, too, that I don't think that lighting for either the president or at a local community level is a one-off issue. Everybody is trying to find ways to lower costs. Everybody, even though they might not talk about it, is still trying to find ways to clean up the environment and reduce greenhouse gas pollutions. So this is a technology that I think falls right in the center of that and provides so many opportunities that I really am hopeful, and I think the future, not to use probably a pun that was used a lot over the last day, but I think the future is really bright for this technology.
Terrific. Thanks very much. All right. Steve, Cisco, I was around when it was routers and then switches. And here's a company that has reinvented itself about 40 times in the last...
Continually, yeah.
and you're the 900-pound gorilla. So what are you thinking about all this?
Well, I think, first of all, I think we have to be very humble. As somebody said to me today, they came up and I said, I'm from Cisco. And I said, he said, oh, I know you guys. And I said, oh, I saw your trucks parked out back delivering the food services. And I said, absolutely, I got it. And I'm here just to make sure that the menu is correct. So if you have complaints about the food, let me know, and we'll deal with that. So, in any industry, I always think the first word is you need to be humble, and then you listen to the needs of the customer and environment. So we're here today, and we really appreciate the invitation. So, for those of you who don't know Cisco, we're about a $50 billion a year company, about 70,000 people in about 160 countries around the world. And we've evolved from a switch router company to a computer company and a networking company and several other things. And as we've looked at the market a few years ago, what we saw was this third or fourth wave of the internet coming. And the first wave was about e-commerce, and thanks to the Mosaic browser and things, people could actually get on and do something with this thing called the internet. And this wave is what we call the internet of everything, or internet of things. And as Hugh indicated, this is going to be a tidal wave. We think it's coming across multiple industries at different speeds. And some of the statistics that he mentioned, one is that today about 6 billion devices are connected, or 12 billion are connected, 6 being personal communications devices. But in the next 5 years, this is going to go to 50 billion, and every estimate that we've made has been underestimated, right? And so this is an explosion coming, and a lot of it's due to intelligent sensors and things being connected, but many different things. A second thing is, what are these devices doing? They're generating massive amounts of data. And for those of you who know the term in the technology business, about 2 exabytes a day. And the first time I said that, this is my wife, she said, are you talking about something the dentist had to say to you, or in terms of my overbite or whatever? But exabyte is about 1 billion gigabytes, and that is growing exponentially. And of course, that information is that data is just data, all right, unless you use tools to convert it to information and value to make business decisions or to make environmental changes, et cetera. But so there's a huge opportunity to take advantage of that explosion of what is occurring in data across multiple industries. And so Cisco is very interested in helping to enable that. And so we looked at the context, and we're seeing it happen. I work in multiple industries, from the smart grid industry to the energy management aspects to smart buildings. We're seeing in this world of lighting is a huge potential driver for this change because of the transition that's occurring in LEDs, et cetera. And what the LED becomes is a very intelligent sensor over time that could be integrated with multiple other capabilities, the light itself. And so we're seeing it really come at 2 areas that we're focusing on. One, obviously, is the smart cities in the external lighting world, where we see the use of sensing equipment changing how information is managed within the city, both in terms of physical surveillance, as well as lighting, as well as environmental monitoring, et cetera. And so the value of how that information can be accumulated and delivered to create new city services or revenue streams, or in more safe cities as we go forward, is of huge value, right, to the city governments. The other area that we're also seeing a significant transition in our work with the building management industry, et cetera, is the internal lighting. And for those of you in the energy and the business industry, or the building industry, today our building and commercial buildings consume more light than the transportation and manufacturing industry combined. More energy, excuse me. And so the opportunity exists not only to address a change in how lighting and networks enable lighting in buildings of the future, we think is significant, but also in how the building itself is managed, as well as the environment about the building and modular and workspace management. We see applications coming together on platforms, both in the city environment and the building environment, that are going to change how people use buildings and the environments by which people operate in the buildings of the future. So we're really excited, and we think this is just two of many sectors. You made a great point regarding, Heather, the utility industry. When you start having information flow, right, when you have distributed power systems and solar or whatever, you have to have networks that can communicate and send back and forth information, not just one-way transmission. And so we do need a significant upgrade in our infrastructure to deliver these capabilities in an energy-efficient way. And finally, I would just say that we recognize at Cisco we're an enabler, hopefully, of how this industry could help to evolve. We view ourselves as probably in part of that role, and certainly an ecosystem to us of partners working together is a critical part of our strategy. And we recognize that many of the companies in this room, of course, our relationship with Sensity has been a great one in early phases right now as we look at how the technology can be delivered for external use in cities. But we believe that partnering is going to be a key part, and those companies that understand how to do that effectively in a balanced way are going to be winners in the long run. So we're very excited about being up here, and thanks for the opportunity.
Terrific. So Ed, Simon's the largest small ownership group in the world, and I'll tell you, having dealt with you a lot, one of the best managed and most disciplined companies in the world, and also I think one of the most visionary. And so could you talk a little bit about this technology generally, and how you're thinking about applications and how it might make you run your business better?
Sure, and thank you, Hugh.
Sure.
I think the Simon Property Group, it's, as you may or may not know, we have over 350 properties or so worldwide. We also have a tremendous amount of lights out there, which we're now in an endeavor where we're going to move all our lighting to 100% LED over the next several years. It's a big undertaking. But it's just not about the lights or the LED. It certainly is bringing energy savings to our properties. But the one thing that we truly focus on is the customer experience. We want that customer to walk into our malls and into our tenant shops, and number one, have a brighter environment in which they're having a good time that day. They're bringing their children, their families, and not only that, it's more about the a comfort and a feeling of I'm feeling safe out here, within the mall environment, walking out in our parking lots, brightening those up so they feel safer walking out at night. Security, as Ed will talk about a little bit later, is certainly foremost on our minds at all our properties. But even though with that, I think Hugh said it earlier, and certainly Heather was, where do we go from here? And for Simon, what we're looking at right now is, now that we install thousands of these lamps, thousands of these fixtures, what we're trying to achieve now is, what is that platform for us going forward? We have, all those societal type benefits coming in from the millennials who are out there now, who are walking in with that cell phone, and that's how they communicate. Well, we want to be part of that communication. So what do? We install Wi-Fi. We may install some other type of communication protocols, for them to be working in. Not just for them, patrons, but as well as an operating group as large as Simon. But with that, there's far more beyond just the LED light. And I couldn't reiterate further what Steve was talking about is certainly that there is an opportunity here. I mean, a real opportunity to build a platform such as they're talking about building it for cities. Well, when you really think about who we are, we're really like a mini city. Every time you walk into one of our properties, there's around 150 to 180 tenants within any one of our properties. We have hundreds upon, maybe thousands of lights there. It's an opportunity for us to build this network, the NetSys network, into our own infrastructure. So what does that give us? It gives us a tremendous opportunity to have that data backhaul that we know is out there, but we've never been able to take advantage of it. We've never been able to bring it into a homogeneous type of place where we can use that data to help us do business better. Now, what do I mean by that? One aspect could be the fact that someone driving into the parking lot has a certain space they always like to go to. They want to park next to Macy's because there's a certain store that they enjoy going to at a certain entrance. What we're trying to achieve now in this platform is, again, that customer experience. When they're coming into that entrance, that we can say to Mr. and Mrs. Jones, yes, that parking space is over here, generally in this area. You can drive over there. And by the way, if it's occupied, there are 7 more right next to it. That's a level of customer service. As our CEO has said for many years now, it's all about the customer. And that's what we believe that the platform is going to allow us to do, is to learn more about our customer, to allow us to provide those services that they all want. It's a big undertaking, because even with all the applications out there, there's a tremendous amount of data that we have to learn how to manage. And once we learn how to manage that data, now we can start to put together the applications and those functions that they truly want. So for us, it's been a truly learning experience trying to figure out what that really means. At the same token, we are talking about a platform, a pretty open platform. That doesn't mean it's just lighting. It could mean, for instance, we've all heard, or maybe you've heard about stores being able to put a coupon out there on the cellular network, or the millennials. I know my son loves it. His wife loves it. They pull up, there's a coupon from a certain store, and off they go. They're going to go run down there. But they're also talking to each other. They're also, pinging each other, via something on the net and saying, hey, there's a wonderful sale over at, wherever. The issue is, though, what do we do after that? So what we're trying to do is the mall is not meant to be a place to go shop per se, but a destination. And that's truly what we're trying to inspire in all our mall teams, is we want that patron to come back and to enjoy that experience. Now, with that said, between wayfinding, coming in, there's that old mall directory, and you're constantly looking at the board trying to figure out exactly where the store is. If you can come up with an application that basically says, I'm looking for, whatever it may be, a certain store could be Abercrombie. You just want to put in Abercrombie, say it's right over here, and the same thing. A directional finder takes you right to that store. There's your customer service. Not only that, you can move out to other applications such as the lights themselves, looking at our traffic patterns. How can we make our parking lots more appealing for anybody coming off the roadways? Well, that takes a lot of time. You're hiring traffic studies, you're hiring a lot of engineers to come in to figure out exactly what those traffic patterns are. But I have a whole lighting network out there that shows me within days, here's your traffic pattern. By the way, here's your traffic patterns during holidays, here's your traffic pattern on Tuesdays, here's your traffic pattern on the weekends. And before you know it, you've got a mini study already done that allows us now to make those changes. Especially, hard to reach places within the parking lot. Maybe we should move barriers. Maybe we should open up the parking lot. Maybe we should build another parking deck because we're going to overflow. But the only way that we as a company are able to do that is because we have to have that information. So it accelerates. It accelerates our belief of what we're trying to achieve as a company. The other aspect of it too is, as Hugh has mentioned, is the security aspect of it. Now you can imagine we have a lot of security out at the mall areas, but it's an expensive proposition to start trenching from pole to put the cameras up to allow us to be able to do what we're trying to do, is make sure that anybody coming onto the property, feels safe. And we have our security folks, and you may see them on the segways riding around. But that's their job, is to try to make everything safe and have a presence within our local areas. Well, again, that's an expensive proposition. If we can do something where we put the camera out there and it's part of the lighting fixture, now we're onto something. Now we've integrated that component into the fixture, as well as noise, as well as temperature or humidity, or looking at traffic patterns, whatever else, into one node, if you will, that allows us to haul all this data back, and now we can work with that in a management type of form. That translates for us into an opportunity to monetize exactly that technology. It allows us to bring in allows us to bring in that customer service, where we're bringing in more customers to the mall. We're giving them an opportunity to even communicate with us on how we're going to operate the mall, and even take suggestions. I mean, we're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. We have a lot of work to do. But in order to do that, we need help from our own patrons to tell us what they want to see, to tell us where they would like to go. So with that, that's where I think the platform and the whole idea of the mini city comes in, because if we can harness that information into one cohesive type of data management system, now we have something to work with. And to just add one more thing is it allows our marketing people to understand the buying habits of our patrons walking through the door. It allows ourselves to work with our tenants and say, here's where we as Simon may be able to help you improve your sales. That's tough to do because we're certainly not in their spaces trying to tell them how to sell, but any information we can apply to that to allow them to make changes is certainly something good for them, it's certainly good for us, and it's certainly good for the patrons. So with that, that's the exciting opportunity. And hopefully in the next year or so, we're going to be continuing to deploy. We have deployed Sensity out there, and it's working great right now. As a matter of fact, just on the energy portion alone, one of our malls in California, we actually had the utility go out and evaluate the energy savings. And I'm an engineer, so I sat there and I said, gee, it's going to be around 48% savings. It was 72. That's how far off I was because of the way we're managing the system and how we're taking the opportunity of the software and what the web enablement gives you to make those changes on the fly. And our team at, I'll just say it's Brea Mall in California, they enjoy it. They see it. The parking lot's a lot brighter than it ever was before. So there's an optic there that says, hey, we're really making a move towards the right type of technology. So if you're a consultant, you're an engineer, you spec lights, whatever else, I mean, I would ask you to talk to your clients and basically say, it's certainly about the light and giving you better light, but what am I going to do with that light afterwards? You have a golden opportunity here to build quite an array of nodes out there to collect data that may help them in the future and quite frankly probably help your own business grow. So thank you.
Terrific. Well, getting back to this theme of a startup, one of the things you can't do is spend a lot of money marketing and selling. So you have to ask yourself, okay, who has a lot of lights? Who has the ability to make decisions quickly, as opposed to a city council? And who has real money? And that was the malls. And they're a terrific opportunity, and they are a mini city. So we're super excited that you guys are thinking in that way. So if you want to go to Boston and you want to get a free meal, invite Ed out to dinner. I've been out to dinner with this guy a couple times, and every single time we go out to dinner, no matter where it is in Boston, they say, thank you for your service, sir. We get the best seat in the house, and they absolutely refuse to charge us. So Ed is just an amazing gentleman and has transformed the city of Boston both before and after the bombings, and is one of the most valuable, I think, experts in the world on community engagement, which is a very hot topic right now. So security is probably the top application that people talk about when you first talk about light sensory networks. And so Ed obviously has a perspective, and so I'd love to hear it.
Thank you, Hugh. And I don't think that you realized that 18 months ago, if I had accepted a free meal, I would have been prosecuted. So after I left, it was all right. So Hugh was benefiting from...
Okay, fine.
Yeah, those ethics things, they're tricky little things. No, but it's been a great pleasure actually working with Sensity and understanding what the potential for this new technology is. For 7 years, I worked for Tom Menino. He was the longest-serving mayor of the city of Boston. He was there for 20 years, and he was known nationally as the urban mechanic. And he was known as the urban mechanic for two reasons. One is he always had the community central in his mind. When he woke up in the morning and when he went to bed at night, he was concerned about what the citizens of the city thought of him and his administration. And that coupled with the fact that he was very much a details guy, made working for him an interesting experience. I learned a lot. He knew how to keep the people happy because he was always on top of everything that was happening in the city. So much so that I had to call him every morning at 6 a.m. And I mean every morning. Christmas morning, St. Patrick's Day, I'm Irish. It's Columbus Day, he was Italian. Every single morning, I would have to call him to tell him what happened overnight. And I had to tell him that because he didn't want to go anywhere and be surprised by incidents that were occurring. He wanted to have a full command of what all of his department heads knew so that he could respond to the people that he ran into during the day. And I'm sure many of you work for the same type of a person. A details person is somebody who gets things done and is very accomplished. So on April 15th, 2013, the mayor was in the hospital. He had fallen ill. And I went to the Boston Marathon. It was the 117th running of the Boston Marathon. And there were 15,000 runners in the course that day. I had reviewed a 50 or 60-page plan that the police department had put together after consultation with all of the federal agencies, including the intelligence services, and there was no specific threat against the Boston Marathon that day. I was there with my wife for 3 hours, and then I left to take care of some business, and I had gone back to my home to drop her off and to take a phone call. And it was then that I got a phone call from my chief of department. And he said that 2 bombs had gone off at the marathon finish line. And I said, what do you mean bombs? Could it be explosions? Could it be electrical in nature? Was there something in the course that caused this to happen? And he said, no, we're talking about multiple amputations here. They're calling for all the ambulances they can get their hands on. So I responded immediately to the scene. I was there in about 12 minutes. They were just taking the last of the 260 or so victims by ambulance to the hospital. There were 42 people in critical condition. There were 12 amputations. There were body parts and blood all over the scene at the Forum restaurant, which was the first scene that I got to. And when I walked across that street, I could feel shrapnel underneath my feet. And so what that told me was, because of the training that I've had over the years since 9/11, what that told me was that this was a terrorist attack. Someone had built a bomb with shrapnel in it that is made only to kill or maim people. And as I got closer, I saw that the damage had gone up 2 stories. And then at 500 feet down the street, I ran down to the first explosion. And there was a larger volume of blood there. The body of Crystal Campbell had just been removed from that scene. At the Forum restaurant, there were 2 bodies. Lindsay Liu, a 23-year-old graduate student from China who was going to BU, as well as Martin Richard, an 8-year-old boy who had been killed on the scene by the explosion. When I got to the first bombing site, I saw that damage had gone up 3 stories. And I realized that there was a conspiracy there, that no one could put this together by themselves. 2 bombs had gone off in close time and physical proximity, and they had been put there to kill and maim people. So realizing that we were dealing with a terrorist attack, I was put back on my heels for just a moment. I realized that the international community would have their full attention on us. I realized that the federal government would have their full attention on us. I realized that there were at least 2 bombers who were still at large who may be attempting to do more damage to our community. And I was slightly overwhelmed at what I saw and what I was responsible for doing. But there were 2 things that made me believe that we could get moving with this and take care of it. And the first thing was the plan that I spoke about earlier. The plan was put together with due diligence and very comprehensive. And so I knew who I could call for help. I called the head of the FBI in Boston. I knew he had a SWAT team and an EOD team standing by. Same with the state police. They had an EOD team and a SWAT team. EOD is a bomb squad. Explosive Ordnance Disposal is what it stands for. But we needed those assets immediately. The medical community had responded in full and was doing an incredible job saving lives. The bodies and the victims were removed within 22 minutes of the explosion. But now we needed to get on and catch these guys. And what I thought back to was a conversation I had with Commissioner Ian Blair of the Metropolitan Police in London just a few weeks after the tube bombings. I went to visit him and sat at his conference table with some colleagues from the United States, and he brought out a mock-up of the bomb. He showed us what it looked like. He showed us how it was operated. He also told us something very, very important at that time. And what he said was they would not have solved the tube bombings without video. So that comment came back to me as I stood on the corner of that street at Boylston and Ring Road on April 15th. And I called one of my lieutenants over and I said, I want you to hit every store down here from the beginning of the final leg of this race course to the end. I want any video that's available. I also realized from being on the course earlier in the day that there were thousands and thousands of personal mobility devices that were taking still photographs and video. And so I joined up with the FBI, set up a system, and we crowdsourced. We went to social media and said, if you were at this race, we need your videos and we need your pictures. And over the next 4 days, the analysis of those videos was the turning point in that investigation. 102 hours after these suspects blew up the Boston Marathon, they were either dead or under arrest. And it was only because of technology that we were able to catch them. And good old-fashioned police work. So it came home to me how very important having a system out there was to us being able to do our job. But more importantly, how having a system that's in place for a long time might actually prevent these things from happening, because that should be our goal. We've contemplated and established very, very significant community policing practices in the city of Boston, engaging the people. And it was only engaging the people after this very serious event that we were able to solve it. But what about the day-to-day crime that's occurring? Not everybody's going to have a Boston Marathon. Not everyone is going to have that kind of a tragic terrorist event. But what about the shootings that happen in American cities all the time? What about the conversation the mayor and I had with a woman who lived in the Mattapan section of the city who said that her 2 kids, ages 12 and 9, were not allowed out of the house all summer because there was too much shooting activity in her neighborhood? The mayor was incensed after she left the room. He said, something's got to be done there. And it was. We assigned dozens of officers to that neighborhood to try to knock down the shooting activity. We installed sensors so that we could listen for gunshots and respond immediately. But those sensors cost us over $2 million to do a 6-square-mile area. So we tried everything we could. That woman should not have to keep her kids in the house. The people in Baltimore should not have to live with the violence that's occurring outside of their doors. And in urban areas in too many cities across this country, this is the standard. So the only thing that has taken care of the problems that we see, and I don't care if that problem is transparency of the police department or that problem is violence and gunshots in the neighborhood, the United States has always been able to respond to these issues that they're struggling with innovative technologies. And it's so exciting that we are on the precipice now of being able to solve some of these problems even better than we have in the past. The crime rate has dropped dramatically over the last 20 years in the United States, but we are at a place right now where we could literally wipe it out. Most of the crime is occurring in urban areas, and most of the people who have crime occurring outside their doors are welcoming video. The police commissioner, superintendent actually, in Chicago is a friend of mine, Gary McCarthy, a former New York chief. Gary does not have any problem in the neighborhoods where the shooting is occurring putting up cameras. People are actually begging for them so that the shooting activity will slow down. So we are at a place right now where we can take these systems and use them as a backbone of a data system that's more than just documenting crime, but is actually giving us the information that we need to appropriately deploy our resources. Right now, New York City and the Boston Police Department uses something called CompStat, where we look at crime that occurred the week before, and we determine where that crime is, and we try to put the cops in those areas. It's colloquially called cops on dots. But what if you knew exactly where people were? And you could move your resources as people move, because that's where the crime is. What if when the mayor woke up in the morning and 10 feet of snow was falling in the Boston area like happened last year, the mayor knew exactly where the snow drifts were? What if you could drive into the city, one of my pet peeves, and have a board that showed you exactly where you could find a parking space? All of these things are possible with this new technology. All of these things are where we should be with the advent of the digital age and computers and big data. So it's not just video, it's not just listening for gunshots, which these systems will all do for one price, but it's the information that you have. It's the details that Mayor Menino needed to run his city. They're being laid at his feet now, after he's passed, so that people in the future will be able to do a much better job of preventing crime, of responding to disorder, and the types of issues, even like graffiti, that were pet peeves of Mayor Menino. This is an exciting time for us, and I'm thrilled to be able to be associated with this company. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. So there's a broad stroke look at a number of perspectives on what systems like this can do and applications. But Ed probably teased more than most at some issues that some of you may be thinking about when you think about systems like this. So 4 billion lights, 4 billion sensor nodes around the globe. Back to my friend the phone. If I told you 20 years ago that you were going to carry something in your pocket or your purse all the time you were up, and it was going to have 2 HD video cameras, a microphone, a GPS chip so it knew exactly where you were, and it was connected to the net 24 hours a day, you might be a little nervous and wonder what was going to happen there with that thing. And in a very similar way, we're at the same stage as 20 years ago when cell phones were just cell phones, thinking about how we are going to evolve these systems to deal with privacy and balance that with the value that gets delivered that Ed was just talking about. One of the things a startup can do, because we don't have a legal department with 50 people in it, we can really focus on these issues. We can drive them. We can not only propose solutions, but then we can go to the Hill and we can lobby to get them adopted. But for that to happen, we have to have somebody who actually knows something about privacy. So Sensity's hired a chief privacy officer. And Scott Shipman, could you come up? Mm-hmm. Scott was the chief privacy officer for eBay PayPal for over 14 years and brings a wealth of experience globally about privacy. So I think we need to add you to this conversation. But maybe you could start by just giving a little bit of your perspective on a system that does, as I've described, and would be used as the panel has described.
Sure. Thanks, thanks Hugh for inviting me up here, and thanks for the job. 16 years ago, I joined eBay, and I was thinking about it and preparing for this panel. It was remarkably a very similar situation in a very similar time. eBay pioneered commerce online, and Sensity is similarly pioneering a whole new technology that will be deployed through the LED upgrades for the planet. At the time, 16 years ago, there were no privacy rules, there was no privacy focus, and it had to be built from the ground up. And today, cities and malls and all of the different areas where we're looking to deploy also need privacy rules and data security standards, because they haven't focused on this type of a system ever before either. And so the role that I see that I've been brought into play is exactly what I've done at eBay, building out with eBay and PayPal a global privacy and information security regime. And I think we've heard many comments here that highlight the need both for Sensity to help provide standards and guide light for our customers as well as our partners. And so that's one, why I'm excited to be here, and two, why I can't wait to see what the next year brings.
Terrific. Well, Ed, you got to think about privacy. A number of us probably go to Simon Properties, hopefully all of us. What do you guys think about it?
From a policy perspective for Simon, we respect everybody's privacy coming into the mall. And the only time I think that we would even have anybody tie into one of our networks is anybody coming to the mall would have to opt in and accept, that type of access. I think in this day and age, we all want our privacy. There's enough information out there about all of us that I don't need to put more about myself out there, that's for sure. But I think it's important that the privacy be respected, and that's, as of right now, is where Simon stands.
So, Steve, you do have the 50 lawyers. So, how is Cisco grappling with this, and what are some of your thoughts?
Well, I think there's two aspects of it here. I think one is what we're doing from a technology perspective, and we're designing what we call an end-to-end threat defense system so that the information flowing over our networks is highly secure, right? And by the way, when people tell you everything is secure, they're telling you a lie, right? There's threats and attacks going on, and they're escalating dramatically. And so it's not only what you secure in your model, but how you respond to attacks quickly to make sure that information itself is protected, or the attack is segmented and localized and restricted so it doesn't permeate the rest of the network or the information or the data with people's information. So protecting people from getting to the information is the first step. The second is also then locating and being very sensitive to the laws of various countries around the world. So we're putting in data centers with partners throughout the globe in different countries where the data privacy laws in Europe are quite different, perhaps in the United States or in China or other countries, to allow people to build applications and capabilities to deploy them aligned with the local laws and the local environment that we're operating in. And then the third thing is really, as I think we have several people working on what are the legislative models, what are some of the inputs given the technology for how the models could emerge over time as we work across governments in this area. And I think it's a very important one. And again, each culture and each environment is often a bit different in how they approach it.
Sure. Terrific. Heather, a federal perspective on privacy?
So I think at the federal level, both within the administration and in Congress, it's an evolution in thinking. I don't think that there's any one person has landed on exactly the right answer on this privacy question. But there is a lot of hand-wringing. And I think, part of that's for two reasons. One, the technology is changing so quickly, it's just really hard for anybody, unless you're in it every day, to understand, what does a reasonable policy look like. And I think that leads to what I would give as advice to anybody here who cares about where Congress or the federal government lands on these issues. Engaging them, helping them understand how you're thinking about it, where you see challenges, where you see opportunities, because we don't have all the answers in Washington, and certainly in this space, there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of concerns that people hear from their constituents, and we have to get the policy right. But I think there is an open door and a lot of opportunity for engagement there.
Ed, we've heard from you. Scott, reactions? What do you think about all that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that Heather said is that you need someone that's in the technology every day, and that's what we are. We're in the technology every day. We heard from Steve that there's a bazillions of bytes of data. We heard from Ed that his key focus is to keep the community happy, and the other Ed that it's all about the customer. And so the common theme there is you have to do the right thing with the data. That's the common theme. And the people that know how to do that best are the ones that are working with the technology day in and day out. And that's us. And when you look at just one example of the Sensity system and platform, we're able to offer safety or security without surveillance. Meaning you don't have a camera capturing all of the video all of the time, recording it as part of that bazillions of bytes of data. You have an edge-based analytic engine that analyzes what it sees and only sends back an alert or an event and a clip of that event. So you're talking about data minimization. You're providing the relevant information when it's needed, and the general information that is our daily lives of us watching the grass grow isn't recorded and kept because it's uneventful. And so that's just one example of the thought process around privacy and security that Sensity has developed and is now working to educate all of you, the cities, and our partners so that they can continue to spread and educate and spread and educate as we begin to deploy this system further.
Okay, we're going to have to cut it short. I really appreciate all of you taking the time to come here this afternoon. I want you to remember this little session, because in 3 or 4 years, this is going to be a very, very different conference. It's going to be dramatically different. And I want you to remember back to the days when this was a really novel thing to spend an entire session talking about privacy and applications and federal policy, because that's what we're going to be doing for the next 3 to 5 years. So thank you all very, very much.